Hello Tucson, hello world. A caller from TEP, Tucson Electric Power Company, named Jim Green. There's a conservation rebate program that both small businesses and schools are eligible for, correct?
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about them and what you have to do to qualify and how it works?
You bet. We call it the Small Business Program. And the eligibility requirement is first you need to be a TEP customer, and you need to be either on rate 10, and your bill lets you know if you're on rate 10 or not.
So they're eligible for rebates for what?
For installing energy efficient measures in their business, includes lighting, refrigeration, and air conditioning. Our first year to the program, we were able to pay out over $1.15 million in rebates to schools and small businesses. I think that there were over 220 different businesses and schools that participated. And out of that total, I think about a little over $250,000 went to.
It works for churches. Mike
Yes.
is calling in, so that's a good thing to mention also.
Absolutely. This program is great for nonprofits.
His name is Michael Shuman, and first and foremost, he is an economist. He is also an author, has written several books, he's a public speaker, but the book that I heard him speak about was the Small-Mart Revolution. And I think you'll find him quite intriguing about why, from an economic standpoint, locally owned businesses make sense. It is so not a political model, it's an economic model that works. And if I apply what you said to some of the locally owned businesses here, it's 100% right. The sustainable businesses here in Tucson, solar is absolutely booming. I have another sponsor called Elastec, and they do roof coatings. Their business is up a significant percentage.
There's so much that we know about small businesses, and nearly all of which are local, that's true, which is that they produce 60 to 80% of the new jobs in the economy. They generate 13 times more patents than do larger businesses. They are the source of entrepreneurship, of smart growth. They reduce carbon footprints. They're good for tourism. They generate more income, wealth, and tax revenues as dollars circulate in your local economy. So there's a really long list of benefits of buying local. And in fact, when you look at your housing and your transportation expense, really the biggest part of that expense is the finance of the house or the finance of the car. So figuring out how to localize those components really is the home run for localization. I mean, who needs to quibble about whether this hammer came from Home Depot? What really matters is, where's your mortgage?
Let's talk about Tina and Lois, because I want people to meet them. The two most important women in our life.
Are the big women that I introduce in my book, The Small-Mart Revolution, and they really represent two archetypes of capitalism. So Tina stands for Maggie Thatcher's invocation, there is no alternative to the global economy. Those who embrace Tina, which is most of the economic development world, really talk about three principles. And the first is attract as many Toyotas that you can find globally to set up in your own backyard. And then the second principle is to export your goods as far and wide globally as possible, because they believe this is the only way you can generate real wealth in your economy is through exports. And then the third is that when it comes to local businesses, even though local businesses don't have that much to do with the Toyotas and don't have that much to do with the export economy, you should convince them that this is all really in their interest. LOIS is my mnemonic for locally owned and import substituting development. You know, the three big ideas that we have is that the strongest economy is going to have the highest percentage of businesses locally owned possible. The second point we make is that even if you are interested in global trade, as we all should be, the key to getting there is not to nurture export businesses. They're going to happen anyway. the key is to nurture local businesses with local markets, because many of those businesses will naturally graduate into globally competitive companies. The last idea is that we're not just interested in any old businesses willy-nilly. We're interested in businesses which our audience will appreciate have high labor and environmental standards.
Everybody is in business to make a profit, even nonprofits, because if you don't, you close. So the soundness of the examples that you gave are, to me, profound and unquestionable. I have to say that.
No, absolutely. If you want to understand why it is that the U.S. stimulus package can spend $750 billion on reviving the economy and do so little for job growth, it's because it acted just like economic development. Obama's stimulus package was a TINA package. It supported non-local business, and very few jobs came out of it.
And that's just absolutely and positively awful.
About 20 years ago, Delicatessen set up shop called Zingerman's, and it had pretty good success for 10 years, but they wanted to grow it a lot further. And they thought, well, we could become a national chain like Schlotzsky's, but that would be a problem because they would lose their quality control, and a lot of what they enjoyed about doing the Delicatessen in Ann Arbor were the personal relationships that they had with the people in the community. So they decided they were going to grow not wide, but deep. Well, they serve sandwiches on bread, so let's do a bakery. And they said, we serve coffee, let's do a coffee roasting company. And we serve ice cream, let's do a creamery. And then looking at things coming out of the Delicatessen, they said, well, we have great food, why don't we also serve it in a sit-down restaurant called the Roadhouse? And we have great customer service, why don't we teach other people how to do that in a training company called Sing Train? So in the end, Zingerman's is now 9 independent businesses. They have interlocking partnerships that meet once a week. And they have created in this town of 100,000, 550 jobs. And their annual sales are $30 million a year. So they took an empty place in the economy and said, we are going to become self-reliant in food, and generated income, wealth, and jobs out of that. That is a possible model for every city in the United States to generate new employment.
My friend Scott from Legendary World, and I keep calling him the legendary, in his own mind, eco-travel dude. So he's going to be sharing with us on a pretty regular basis tips for traveling in an eco-friendly way.
I found an app that actually does a carbon offset, or I'm sorry, a carbon footprint comparison. So I pulled it up, it's like I'm going to San Diego, and it actually gives you options for flying versus a rental car and an SUV and all kinds of fun stuff. So that'll actually be on our website that you can find by going to mrsgreensworld.com. Under Green Living, there's a whole new travel section that we're involved in. So when you get there, you can actually click through to my website. The other thing that we're launching with this new segment and program with Mrs. Green is we're actually giving away a all-expense-paid trip to Kenya.
Guess
with
what?
airfare.
I registered.
Oh, good.
I'm telling everybody, I don't care. It doesn't say that you can't register if you're connected. I registered. Like, you gotta be kidding, I want to win.
Definitely.
I will never drive to LA again. I get attention deficit disorder at about 5 hours, and I start pulling my hair out and twitching, so I fly to LA. Well, when you did that with us at dinner the other night, it was better to fly to San Diego.
It's about half. And
Then
again, it's
driving
based
your
on the
speed,
number of
right.
people that are traveling on that plane. And
Right,
a lot
right.
of people say, well, don't travel, but I mean, the plane's going anyway. So
People are going to travel.
I've never believed, I'm not, again, my whole thing, which I fell in love with Mrs. Green, was the whole Mrs. Green goes mainstream. It's not about going back to the buggies and we're a travel company. I mean, we're not technically what people consider a green company, but we're trying to be a green enterprise here in Tucson and green people. serving travelers.
And you've taught me there are a ton of things you can do about where you're going to stay, and you can ask questions that are important about changing their towels, about water conservation.
Well, a lot of people get to a hotel too, and they forget everything they do at home. So they leave the shower running, they do the toothpaste, they brush their teeth
It's
with
kind
the
of
water
how you
on.
treat a rental car.
Yeah, so now it's, that's part of what we talk about with our clients too, is just trying to remember some of those things and not just go crazy when you get there.
And when we did the cruise, Mrs. Green Goes to Sea, there were lots of very eco-friendly things they were doing on that cruise to remind you, turn off the lights when you leave your cabin. If you don't need to get your towels changed, just, hang them up, and they don't have to be washed all the time.
Anyway, thank you. We're very excited to be a sponsor and a part of Mrs. Green's world.
All of you out there, this is Mrs. Green Goes Mainstream News Talk 790 KNST. Talk to you next week. Frickin' flu! Someday that's going to be hard. But I said frickin'.